Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Memory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, bringing you my 2011 Southeastern Conference preview. It's always a tough season in the SEC, so let's just start with the recruiting trail and see how well these teams recruited this past offseason. In the Southeastern Conference, you have to give it to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Headliner class, a lot of defensive players, but the headliner of this group, you have to look at safety, Hashawn Clinton-Dix. This guy is the #1 safety prospect in the country, 6'1", 203 pounds. All across the board, he's the #1 rated prospect. Defensively should be work wonders in that Nick Saban defense. Here are some key recruits in the Southeastern Conference. Let's start with Arkansas's offensive tackle, Bray Cook. This guy is 6'7", 317, a force. Doesn't allow sacks and should be a solid player for the Razorbacks. Now, let's take a look at Auburn's offensive lineman, Christian Westerman. This guy can run block, he can move his feet well, he has great hands and pass protection, should be a solid player for the Tigers. Florida was able to get one of the top quarterbacks, Jeff Driscoll. This guy you see right here with this amazing running ability, but don't sleep on his passing skills. He should probably see some time as a true freshman. Georgia is going to start a true freshman at tailback. Isaiah Crowell is the best running back in the country. This guy is going to be a stud for the Bulldogs. Kentucky needs to replace their talented do-it-all threat Randall Cobb, but Bubba Tandy is a guy that may do so. This guy had over 6 punt returns for touchdowns in high school. LSU got one of the best defensive linemen in the country, Anthony Johnson. This guy had over 67 sacks as a high school player, should be a force in the LSU front four. Mississippi State has a great defensive back, Darius Slade, JUCO transfer, guy that's a ferocious hitter in that back half of that defense. Ole Miss was able to get an outstanding linebacker in C.J. Johnson. This guy should start as a true freshman, might be one of the best players in this draft class. Jadeveon Clowney was the #1 prospect in the country defensively. We're going to see how well he does as a defensive end. He's going to start right away for the Gamecocks. Living up to its moniker, wide receiver U, Tennessee gets another outstanding threat, and DeAnthony Arnett reminds me a lot of Robert Meacham. Vanderbilt had a very underrated class, and they got probably their quarterback of the future in LaFontaine Thorogood. This guy's going to be a star. May see sometime this year as a true freshman. Here's some Southeastern Conference superlatives, starting with the best quarterbacks in the SEC. I'm going to go with the Georgia Bulldogs. Aaron Murray showed me a lot last year as a freshman. This guy has that moxie, has that leadership, and he has the running ability to make plays outside of the pocket. Best running back core in the SEC, I'm giving it to the Auburn Tigers with Michael Dyer in the backfield. This guy is one of the top backs to come out last season and started as a true freshman. And also Ontario McCaleb. This guy has a lot of speed. So those two guys bring an explosive tandem to that Tigers backfield. Best receiving core in the SEC, I'm giving it to the Arkansas Razorbacks. You look at talented playmakers like Greg Childs and Jarius Wright, but even their tight end, Chris Gregg, is an outstanding player, and they're going to make the transition from Ryan Mallett to Tyler Wilson very smooth because these guys are super explosive. Best offensive line, I'm giving it to the Alabama Crimson Tide. You look at guys like Chase Womack, William Velachos. These guys are very good players up front. A lot of leadership on this front four, and they should be able to run the football with more effectiveness this season. Best defensive line, you have to give it to the Gamecocks of South Carolina. Devin Taylor is the headliner, but also Melvin Ingram is a very solid player, led the team in sacks. But adding Jadeveon Clowney as a true freshman should help this group be more explosive. But Trevain Robertson is also a guy that's a stud. The Crimson Tide's linebackers get my nod for the best core. You look at Dante Hightower, Courtney Upshaw, C.J. Mosley, but there's a lot of depth with Jarrell Harris, Nico Johnson. These guys can really stop the run and effectively cover in the pass game. Speaking of stopping the pass, you have to give it to LSU. Even without their talented All-American cornerback Patrick Peterson, you still have guys like Tyrann Mathieu, Morris Claiborne, and the free safety Craig Lawson. These guys are very solid, all can tackle, and all have amazing ball skills. The Bulldogs get my nod for the best special teams. You look at the kicker Blair Walsh and punter Drew Butler. These guys are outstanding players, and they also have 2 outstanding returners in Brandon Boykin and Brandon Smith. Offensive MVP, I'm going with Marcus Lattimore of South Carolina. This guy rushed for over 1,100 yards last season as a true freshman, 17 touchdowns. There's no reason why he shouldn't improve on those already outstanding numbers. Defensive MVP, Drake Kirkpatrick of Alabama. It has some room for improvement, but I think this will be the year he breaks out. Already a physical presence in that secondary. Should have an outstanding year with more interceptions. Has a good frame at 6'3", 195. Freshman of the year, Isaiah Crowell, the true freshman running back of Georgia. This guy is going to start as a freshman, and he's going to get a lot of carries. And one thing I like about him is his vision and his explosiveness through the hole. So that's going to help him out a lot in the SEC. Should be a phenomenal player for years to come. Pro prospect in the SEC, I'm going with Elshon Jeffrey, wide receiver out of South Carolina. This guy has sticking for hands, 6'4", 217, over 1,500 yards receiving last year, 9 touchdowns. But he's the physical freak that the NFL scouts salivate over. Who has the toughest schedule? I think it's the Auburn Tigers. You look at the fact that they've lost Cam Newton and Nick Fairley on defense. Look at this schedule. They have to travel to Clemson, South Carolina, Arkansas, LSU, and Georgia, and they get Alabama last in the season, their rivalry game. That's a tough slate for a team that's rebuilding that quarterback. Predictions in the SEC. Let's start with the SEC East. Number 6, I have Vanderbilt finishing. Reasons for optimism. You have to love the running back tandem of Zach Stacy and also Warren Norman, and you have to love their defense and their head coach. But causes for concern, the quarterback play. Can Larry Smith cut down on his interceptions and be a threat in the passing game? That's the biggest question, and that offensive line has some holes. But what we will learn is that Vanderbilt will continue to be competitive and has a great recruiting class for the future. Next up is the Kentucky Wildcats. Reasons for optimism. You have to love their defense. Linebacker Danny Trevathan is one of the best in the country, and that secondary is outstanding. Cause for concern, that offense. Can they get those points on the scoreboard to help out that defense? But what we will learn is that they will get better offensively, and they will do an adequate job of replacing those stars in Cobb and also Locke at the running back position. Tennessee Volunteers I have finishing 4th. Reasons for optimism. You have to love the potential of that offense. You know, you got Tyler Bray out there at quarterback. You have Torrin Poole in the backfield and some explosiveness at the wide receiver position. Now, causes for concern is that secondary. Can these guys stop the pass this season? That has just yet to be seen, and how well they will do with the linebacking core, because there's some questions there. But what we will learn is that this year, one, Tennessee will make a bowl game, and Derek Dooley had these guys running in the right direction. The Florida Gators I have finishing 3rd. Reasons for optimism. You have to love the turbo boosters in the backfield with Jeff Demps and also Chris Rainey. But causes for concern, you have to wonder how well those players on the team will adjust to the offense by Charlie Weiss. But what we will learn is that an already tough defense will be even tougher this season, and John Brantley will improve and be the quarterback that we all envisioned when he came out of high school. The Florida Gators aren't that far off. I have the Bulldogs finishing 2nd in the SEC East. Reasons for optimism. You got to like Aaron Murray, the best quarterback in the SEC. And that 3-4 defense, these guys will be able to get after the quarterback. D'Angelo Tyson, adding defensive tackle, nose tackle, John Jenkins to that already aggressive defense will help anchor the front 3, and the rest of the guys you know can get after the quarterback. Causes for concern is that offensive line. How well can they protect Murray, and who's going to step up and be the explosive playmaker that A.J. Green was on the flanks? But what we will learn is that the Bulldogs will challenge for the SEC East title. The Gamecocks winning the SEC East. Reasons for optimism. You have to love what they bring to the table. They can run the football with the best in the country with Marcus Lattimore, and they can play stout defense, one of the best D-lines in the country. Causes for concern is the quarterback play. Can Steven Garcia be more consistent, and can that offensive line protect Garcia? But what we will learn is that the South Carolina Gamecocks will play for the SEC title. Moving over to the West, I have the Auburn Tigers finishing 6th. Reasons for optimism. You have to love the explosiveness of the backfield of Dyer and McCaleb, and you look for them to lean on the running game a little bit more this season. Causes for concern. They have to replace the Heisman Trophy winner and arguably their best player in Cam Newton, and that defense has a lot of holes now with the departure of Nick Fairley and company. But what we will learn is that this team will struggle this season, but 2012 will be bright for the young Auburn Tigers. Next up is the Ole Miss Rebels. Reasons for optimism. You have to love tailback Brandon Boykin and the improvement of that offensive line. I think they're going to be vastly improved this season. Now, causes for concern is that defense. How well will those linebackers improve, and can they get to the quarterback, and will that secondary show up this season? But what we will learn is that this team will be a team that's going to give a lot of teams fits in the SEC. I have the Mississippi State Bulldogs finishing 4th. Reasons for optimism. You have to love the progression of Chris Ralph, the quarterback, and that talented tailback Vic Ballard. And they also have some stout defensive players. But causes for concern, let's start with that defense. Can they get to the quarterback? Can they get more aggressive this season? They have a solid nucleus in place. And will that offensive line replace the tackle Derek Sherrod? But what we'll learn is that the Bulldogs will make it to another bowl game, and that defense will cause a lot of teams problems this season. I have the Arkansas Razorbacks holding the 3rd spot in this side of the division. Reasons for optimism. You have to love the explosiveness of that offense. Now Davis and Greg Childs, very explosive players, and the defense got better over the course of the season, so there's a lot to like about Arkansas. Causes for concern is that offensive line. They have to replace 2 bookends. They're starting a true freshman at right tackle and Bray Cook, but what we will learn is that the Razorbacks is a dark horse candidate to win the SEC West. Next up is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Reasons for optimism: you have to love the veteran offensive line and the defense. They're very solid defensively, the back seven at least. But causes for concern is the quarterback spot. How can A.J. McCarron keep off Phillip Sims? I think Sims should be the starter, but also defensively, can they replace Marcel Darius? That's going to be a huge hole to fill. But what we will learn is that Alabama has enough talent to possibly play for a national title. Have the LSU Tigers finishing first. Reasons for optimism: you have to love the overall talent on this team. Defensively, they are still aggressive. That secondary is one of the best in the country, even without Peterson, and they can run the football with the best of them. Causes for concern has to be Jordan Jefferson in that quarterback spot. That's the biggest question. If they can throw the football, this would be a tough team to defeat. But what we will learn is that quarterback Zach Mettenberger will probably lead the Tigers to a national title. More college football preview videos, visit footballgameplan.com/collegefootball or visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/footballgameplan. And listen to the Football Game Plan radio show, which airs Saturdays 11 a.m. Eastern Time at blogtalkradio.com/footballgameplan.